The Final Fantasy series has some of the most iconic video game characters ever created. Okay, so the majority of them are cliché to at least some degree, but that hasn't stopped us from embracing them and wanting to know them more as we make our way through each of their individual stories. And with new games such as Final Fantasy XV and the Final Fantasy VII Remake making their way to the current generation, it seems as good a time as any to revisit some of the old favourites. If you want more Final Fantasy content, then you can find complete walkthroughs for Final Fantasy VII, X, and XIII too on my YouTube channel. In this top 10 list, I will be giving my totally subjective and biased opinion, of course, on who my favourite Final Fantasy player-controlled protagonists are, and for this video I will be sticking with the main numbered entries of the franchise only. That means I won't be including fan favourite villains such as Kefka or Sephiroth, and neither shall you find popular characters such as Final Fantasy VII Zack, who only actually became playable in Crisis Core. If you enjoy this top 10, please remember to subscribe to my channel and hit the thumbs up button. A character named Cid has become a staple, a recurring theme in the Final Fantasy franchise, with a different character going by this name in every game of the main series beginning with Final Fantasy II. For the number 10 of my list, I have chosen the Final Fantasy VII variant, Cid Highwind. Although he outwardly presents himself as a foul-mouthed, chain-smoking and mean-spirited individual, Cid is actually a caring and selfless member of our team, who has sacrificed his own dreams to help the people that he loves. Now, Cid may not be pleasant to talk to, but he does act with good intentions, and it is fun to finally see him realise his dream of going into space, even if this isn't under the best of circumstances. Apparently, Final Fantasy VI has no official main character, but if it did, then it would surely be Terra Branford. Initially a confused and somewhat timid young lady, Terra eventually begins to learn more about herself, becoming courageous and assertive in the process. As the game progresses, it is only natural for the player to develop an attachment, an emotional connection with Terra and her story. We see this same theme continue in later Final Fantasy games with characters such as Aeris and Yuna. But this theme of connecting the player with a female lead really began with Terra, and for that, she makes our list. If Aeris was the sweet, stereotypical pink girly girl of Final Fantasy VII, then no doubt that balance was met with Tifa Lockheart, her tough, fist-wielding, empowered female counterpart. Tifa was a leading member of the mostly feared Shinra-designated terrorist organisation known as Avalanche. She was also a childhood friend of the game's hero Cloud Strife. Tifa is the person who is there for Cloud and helps him find himself during his darkest of hours. While you would be absolutely foolish to double-cross Tifa, she packs a powerful punch after all. If you stay on her friends list, then there could surely be nobody better to have by your side. Auron is encountered early on by the player during Final Fantasy X, and it is clear from the get-go, with the deep macho voice and a blade strapped across his back, that we are dealing with a badass. Auron has become famous across the world of Spira, and definitely become something of a mentor to both Yuna and Tidus. If Auron wasn't cool enough already, he also has a twist in his story, which the game reveals later on, and while I won't spoil that particular plot point here, when you discover it, you'll definitely think twice on what you thought you knew about his mysterious character. Although Balthier may not be the real hero of Final Fantasy XII, you best not mention that to him, or else you may end up facing the full judgment of his sharp one-liners and his witty put-downs. Although some fans criticise Final Fantasy XII for its different take on gameplay, combat, and its perhaps somewhat convoluted story, one thing pretty much everybody was in agreement on was that the game's script was second to none. A big part of this was thanks to Balthier himself. A sky pirate by trade, Balthier would often be travelling the world on his airship, with his trusted partner Fran by his side. Described as both charming and cunning, Balthier may initially be assumed to be a rip-off of Han Solo, though he actually has multiple layers of personality, which end up developing much deeper than the player may initially expect. Vincent Valentine is one of 2 optional playable characters that can be recruited in Final Fantasy VII, and he doesn't even actually appear in any of the game's computer-generated cinematics. Yet he has still become a cult hero amongst the fans, and it would be almost criminal not to include him in my top 10 list. His stylised, almost vampiric look pretty much ensured Vincent's popularity from the get-go. Ironically, he was almost cut from the game completely, but fortunately for us, his potential was recognised. Sadly, he remains a minor party member who never really develops too much, and his limit break, although fun to use, is terribly lacklustre in power when compared to other characters' attacks. It is a shame to think that such an awesome character could have been so much more. That said, not many of the huge Final Fantasy cast are popular enough to get their own game as Vincent did with Dirge of Cerberus, and he definitely remains to this day one of my own personal favourites. Vivi is a young black mage with a mysterious and yet well recognisable appearance. He is often found contemplating, and at times even questioning the purpose of his own existence. The role of a black mage may not be unique to Final Fantasy, but Vivi's journey reminds all of us that we each have a purpose in the world we're in, and there can surely be nothing more important than finding that purpose and fulfilling it. Vivi is a very lovable character and demonstrates a tremendous mix of old and new. I can't help feel sympathetic towards him, especially when he has to witness a particularly terrible event involving his black mage brothers. Okay, so every top 10 list needs some controversy, and for this list it has to be my number 3 pick. Now, it's true that a lot of people pretty much hate Tidus, and much of that I think is down to the somewhat lacklustre voice acting of the English dub. However, what cannot really be questioned is the risk that was taken in ensuring that Tidus did not simply become a carbon copy of the traits we had seen previously with Cloud and Squall. Instead, Tidus was much more upbeat and outwardly caring, and his relationship with Yuna is probably one of the best examples of a Final Fantasy romance done to date. Yes, he has his Mardy moments, but overall, Tidus did a good job at challenging the status quo of clichés put into place from the franchise's previous instalments, and for that, he has earned a place on my list. For many, including myself, Final Fantasy VII is not only the best game of the series, but arguably the best RPG of all time. The game's main character, Cloud Strife, stamps his mark on the player from the very get-go as a will-work-for-anyone mercenary type who has a seemingly careless attitude towards his comrades and their politics. Of course, it turns out, however, that there is simply so much more to Cloud than this, and with an absolute corker of a backstory, and a strong bond that is developed between himself and several of the other party members, Cloud is likely the greatest main playable protagonist of Final Fantasy history, and his Buster Sword is pretty darn effective too. Okay, so now we've counted down through 9 of my favourite Final Fantasy playable protagonists, and I'd say it's just about time to unveil my number 1 pick. Do you agree with my list so far? Have I got them right? Let me know in the comments what your own top 10 list would be and why, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please remember to subscribe to my channel and hit that thumbs up like button. And here we have it, my number 1 pick, which goes to Aeris from Final Fantasy VII. Aeris is introduced to the team early on through the adventure, simply as the flower girl, but she soon begins to reveal she is so much more than this. She has a rich backstory that includes emotion and tragedy, and yet Aeris has fought through her own battles to develop into a lovable and trusting person who could often be found tending to the flowers in her church. When she joins up with our party, she bonds very closely with Cloud, causing some short-lived friction between herself and Tifa. Ultimately, however, Aeris commits the greatest sacrifice, giving her own life by Sephiroth's Masamune blade, and becoming part of the planet's livestream, in order to help Cloud fight away the impending destructive magic known as Meteor. When I first played through Final Fantasy VII, it was this particular moment that stayed with me, and really cemented the game deep into my gaming heart. Even today, when I play Final Fantasy VII, I kind of hope Cloud can reach Aeris before it's too late. But of course, he never does, and he can't, and that is the power of Final Fantasy storytelling. And that brings today's top 10 list to a close. But if you want to see more, stay right with me here at FuzzfingerGaming.